Retro Quickies Adventure. It's time for us to take a look at the very original, fully controllable adventure game, the first game to take inspiration from a text adventure and translate that into a character you can fully control. Designed by Warren Robinett and originally conceived as a conversion of the text game Colossal Cave Adventure, if you're of a certain age, odds are good that this is what you think of when you think about Atari. And you know what? While yes, it is a very simplistic and at some level obtuse game, it is very impressive when up against its contemporaries, many of which were just arcade-style high-score tests where you were just seeing how long you could last. Very few games actively attempted to have a legitimate end goal at this point in time, and Adventure was one of the first. You play as, well, yourself, honestly. The game and the manual encourage you to place yourself in the pixels of this little square, going off on a quest to find a grail and return it to the Golden Castle. In order to do that, you have to venture through hostile lands, navigate through terrifying mazes, and defeat or outwit the three evil dragons prowling the kingdom: the yellow Yorgle, the green Grundle, don't laugh, and the red Rindle. Find the keys to the three castles, unlock the gates, use the treasures of the land to help you in your adventure, grab the grail, and return it to its rightful home. Sounds simple, yeah? Well, your goal is very easy to understand, but achieving it is something that's going to take a bit of practice. As the adventurer, you can freely move around in 8 directions wherever you please, and basically nowhere in the world is off limits to you. You can essentially navigate to anywhere in the overworld that you please, and the only thing that can kill you is if you happen to run into one of the 3 dragons and get eaten by them, which is surprisingly easy to do, especially on later difficulties. However, this is one of the few Atari games that doesn't have lives or a true game over state. If you get eaten, you can simply reset back to the Golden Castle and pick up your playthrough from there, with the only consequence being that any dragons you had already slain will respawn if you choose to revive yourself. Not that you'll have an easy time doing that on certain difficulties, but we'll get into that. In order to complete your task, you have to find the Grail, and in order to find the Grail, you have to get out and explore, and use the items scattered throughout the world to help make progress. There's a sword, which can be used to slay the dragons by running into them with it. There are the gold, white, and black keys, which will let you enter their correspondingly colored castles, a magnet that will draw other items towards you, a magical bridge that you can use to bypass basically any walls in the game if you want, and the Grail itself. Despite the limited graphics of the 2600, I'm fairly impressed with how well that they convey these items and their uses. Of course, this might also just be pop culture osmosis talking. As one of the 2600 games, right up there with the likes of games like Pitfall and the home port of Space Invaders, Adventure is one of those games that I feel like a lot of retro game enthusiasts have at least some idea of how to play, even if they've never touched it before. So you have all these items, but there's a bit of a snag here. You can only carry one item at a time, and while you can drop an item anywhere that you please, trying to pick one up while already carrying one will result in you dropping the first. This does require you to actually play around and shuffle the items so that you can have what you need relatively available to you, which is easier said than done depending on the difficulty. And it's that difficulty that's really going to make the game so challenging for someone who hasn't played it much before. The game has 3 different difficulty modes, and they're all surprisingly different. Level 1 is a very simplified version of the game. It cuts out huge chunks of the world, including the infamous invisible mazes and the White Castle. You only have to worry about 2 dragons who don't go far beyond their initial spawn screens, and all of the items are in fixed positions. In this mode, since you start with the sword close at hand, you can immediately kill off both the dragons, grab the black key, go through the blue maze, into the Black Castle, grab the Grail, and bring it back to the Golden Castle relatively quickly. That's the game with massive training wheels on, though. Level 2 is considered the normal version of the game, and that's where things start to get interesting. All of the items are now shuffled to new locations, but their starting positions are still fixed. The world is now heavily expanded to include an invisible maze, a white castle that has its own catacombs within it, and a 3rd dragon, the Red Dragon. And also the dragons will now chase you across nearby screens if they notice you. And then this mode adds the absolute worst thing about this game, the Bat. The Bat is the thing that makes this game an absolute bitch to play. The Bat isn't hostile, they can't hurt you, at least not physically. but their gimmick can cause some serious emotional damage. The bat will fly all over the world and will randomly grab items and deposit them elsewhere. Heck, he can even grab and transport the dragons around, which can really put a dent in any plans you have. You can grab the bat like you would any other item, but the issue there is that he will eventually break free from your grasp. And you can't even kill it like you can the dragons. He'll just grab the sword out of your grasp and keep on flying on his merry way. The dragons remain a constant threat, since, again, they'll chase after you across several screens, but it's made even more difficult because if the difficulty switches are in particular configurations, the dragons will actively avoid you if you're carrying the sword, which at least gets them out of your way, but the minute you pick up something else and leave the blade behind, they will immediately be after you again. And then there are the quote-unquote invisible maze portions, which is basically just a low visibility area where you can't see the entire screen, including enemies, items, and obstacles. Getting through this thing is always a bitch, and yes, it is the same layout every time. The mazes don't change their layout or direction, and yet it's always so easy to get disoriented in this thing. You may have also noticed that I've slowed down a lot of the footage I have of this because I didn't want to cause eye strain or seizures in my audience. I'm pretty sure this is just a consequence of playing a really old game on a really new monitor, but whenever there's an item or anything other than you on screen in this particular maze, it causes the maze to flash violently, which obviously isn't ideal, but that's probably just the fact that it wasn't made to run with a modern refresh rate. The worst part was that I couldn't be sure when it was going to happen, considering I had no control over when that stupid bat was going to fly in and just make everything go to hell. So yeah, this might be the main game, but it is a significant step up in difficulty, because the bat shuffling items around basically means that even though the items are all in set starting locations, you essentially have to pray that you can beat the bat there, or that it doesn't steal the item from you, or brings a dragon to a location where getting around it is going to be a hassle. I had to reset my game quite a few times because for some reason all 3 dragons seemed to love to congregate in the blue maze when I was trying to make my way to the Black Castle. And then you have level 3, which takes the annoyance up an additional level. It is essentially the same game layout as level 2, but every item in the game is randomized. The bat is also still there, just shuffling things around, which only adds to the terror and the confusion. Unfortunately, that does mean that you can often find yourself in situations where it really doesn't feel possible to continue. Items can be dropped within walls in such a way that, unless you happen to have easy access to the magnet or the magic bridge, you can't get them back. Dragons will constantly congregate in places where avoiding them is almost impossible. Sure, you have unlimited continues, but more often than not, I felt like it was faster and easier to just reset and start from scratch on these difficulties, rather than keep dealing with whatever cluster the game had invented for me. Conversely, level 1 is so simple and quick that it feels far too easy. Once you've gotten through the first level once, it never changes, and it's short and straightforward. Conversely, as soon as the bat and the invisible maze is introduced, the game's difficulty takes such a sharp spike upward that, while it is definitely more engaging, it can also still be very frustrating. All of these frustrations aside, the game does legitimately feel like an adventure. It feels like a quest. You can see a lot of the foundations here that would be used for a lot of other video games going forward. It's primitive, and it definitely has its frustrations, mostly due to its age, but hey, it has its own sort of charm. It's easy to understand, and it does what it's trying to do pretty well. I dare say I find this game a lot more fun compared to the other games on the console just because replaying it never feels like it's the same thing twice. Unless I'm playing on difficulty level 1 because I want to actually feel good about myself. There's a reason why this one is so well remembered, not just as a good game for its time, but as an important game in general. And it's because its minimalist design doesn't stop it from being easily understood, and it can still be very fun to play, at least in short bursts. Nah, I'm just kidding. The only reason people remember this so fondly is because of the friggin' duck dragons. Look at these guys. Oh my god, he just ate me.